check! It's English O'Clock! Ang pag-aaral ng English upang madaling matutunan, bakit hindi natin simplihan? Halika! Manood at makinig sa English Teacher ni Juan!
Kung bago ka pa lang sa channel na to, huwag kang matakot. I made learning English easy for you. Please like, comment, and subscribe. At pakishare mo na rin sa iba para marami pang mga Juan na gaya mo ang matuto. Hi there, grade 9 learners! This is your chance to fully understand your first lesson for the third quarter. Ready ka na ba? Tara, let's start! Our target most essential learning competency for this video is differentiate biases from prejudices. Have you been judged before because of your appearance and behavior? Have you selectively listened to someone who is speaking in preference to your choice? Have you become so receptive or friendly to certain people only? Have you ever experienced not being selected and not being given a favor? The terms bias and prejudice ang sentro ng talakayan natin ngayon. Actually, bias and prejudice are closely related and often used interchangeably as both have a negative impact on our dealings. Alamin natin ang pagkakaiba ng dalawang konseptong ito. What is bias? Bias is the action of supporting or opposing a particular person or thing in an unfair way because of allowing personal opinions to influence your judgment. Ang keywords natin dito ay favoritism and unfairness. Here are some of the most common types of biases: anchoring bias, media bias, confirmation, conformity, and halo effect. Now, let's deal with this one by one. First is anchoring bias. This happens when people rely too much on pre-existing information or the first information they find when making decisions. When we become anchored to a specific idea, we end up filtering all new information. For example, one person's viewpoint is anchored on the idea that martial law is generally bad because it suspends all citizens' rights as written on academic textbooks. Because of this, that person cannot see the other side of the narrative, which tells somehow the better side of martial law implementation. Next is media bias. This happens when journalists and news producers select the events and stories that are reported and how they are covered. Ito ay taliwa sa sinasabi ni Mr. Mike Enriquez na ang pagbabalita ay dapat na walang kinikilingan, walang pinoprotektahan, at ang serbisyo publiko ay dapat laging totoo lamang. These are some examples of media bias. A certain TV station is against a certain presidential candidate while supporting another candidate to win the election. So, ang mga ibabalita nila ay tungkol sa mga kasiraan ng kandidatong ayaw nilang manalo, samantalang puro kabutihan at kasipagan naman ng kalaban nitong kandidato ang kanilang ipalalabas sa pamamagitan ng media. O kaya naman ay ganito. They invited a set of presidential candidates who are well known to join a debate, while leaving behind those candidates who are not popular. The third type of bias is confirmation. It is the tendency of people to favor information that confirms their existing beliefs. For example, isa kang dog lover who believes that dogs are better than cats. Ngayon, when somebody says that cats are better than dogs, which is the opposite of what you believe in, the tendency is that you will search for information that will support what you believe. Ibig sabihin, hahanap ka ng mga ebidensya o impormasyon na magpapatunay na higit na mainam talaga ang aso kaysa sa pusa. The fourth one is conformity. This happens when one makes a wrong or uncomfortable decision to fit in to please the group of people. An example of this is conformity bias in the workplace. When your hiring team gets together to review a candidate's application materials and conduct the interview, conformity bias can cause individuals to sway their opinion of a candidate to match the opinion of the majority. Ibig sabihin, kahit hindi yung aplikante talaga na yon ang gusto mo sanang ma-hire sa trabaho dahil sa tingin mo ay mas may qualified pa sa kanya, pero sa huli, siya na rin ang binigyan mo ng mataas na puntos dahil siya ang gusto ng karamihan sa team mo. You are doing this to conform to the decision of the majority. Lastly is the halo effect, also referred to as the halo error. It is a type of cognitive bias whereby our perception of someone is positively influenced by our opinions of that person's other related traits. The halo effect is also something referred to as the physical attractiveness stereotype and the what is beautiful is also good principle. Physical appearance is often a major part of the halo effect. People who are considered attractive tend to be rated higher on other positive traits as well. Another example of halo effect is this. Among the applicants, only Leo's papers were completely reviewed because the manager was impressed with his awards and commendations. After discussing what bias is and including its types, proceed naman tayo sa discussion on prejudice. What is prejudice? Prejudice refers to prejudging before looking at the evidence. It is an unfavorable opinion or feeling beforehand without knowledge, thought, or reason. Prejudice can have a strong influence on how people behave and interact with others, particularly with those who are different from another group. The most common types of prejudice include racism, sexism, classism, ageism, and religion. Racism is the idea that groups of people exhibit different personality, characteristics, and can be separated based on the dominance of one race over another. Isang senaryo na maibibigay kong example of racism was the time when the Chinese in the country were considered virus carriers due to the COVID-19 disease. It is like an impression na basta Chinese ay carrier na agad ng virus, although wala naman talagang sakit. Next is sexism. Sexism is a form of prejudice based on sex or gender. Long before, women are considered weak and lack the strength and ability to do the work of men. There was also a time na nagkaroon ng prejudice against the gay and lesbian community, that they were treated differently because of their gender preference. But gladly, the situation is different now as the LGBT community is widely accepted in our society. Classism. This is a prejudice based on social class or grouping of individuals based on wealth, occupation, income, education, and social network. Ito ay may kinalaman sa estado o katayuan ng isang tao sa lipunan. An example of this type of prejudice is the idea that the poor are uneducated and do not help our country, and therefore should not be treated well by the government. Next is ageism. This is a prejudicial attitude towards older people old age and the aging process. Example: all adults should not be hired because they only become a burden, especially those who deserve to retire. Ito ang ideya na hindi na dapat tinatanggap pa sa trabaho ang mga matatanda o may edad na dahil magiging pabigat lamang sila sa kumpanya o kaya naman ay dahil wala na silang gaanong magiging ambag pa dahil sa kanilang edad. And lastly is religion. This is the attitude towards a person or group differently because of the particular beliefs about religion. Example: he lost his job because of his religion, which was believed to conflict with his employer. To wrap up our discussion, here is a simplified comparison between bias and prejudice. Bias: an inclination for or against a person, idea, or thing, especially in a way considered to be unfair. Prejudice: preconceived opinion that is not based on actual experience or reason. Bias: both negative and positive attitudes. Prejudice: usually negative attitudes. Bias: results in unfairness. Prejudice: results in discrimination. Examples of biases: Teacher X favors certain students over others in grading final performance. Picking articles or stories that are pleasing to the owners of the media organization or network. Examples of prejudice: it is sometimes assumed that someone who is physically disabled is also mentally disabled. Some people may consider all Muslim women to be illiterate and uneducated. This is actually a prejudice against religion and gender.
So did you learn something today? Sure ako na hindi ka na nosebleed. If you want more of this video tutorial and learn English in a light speed, huwag kalimutang mag-subscribe at i-turn on ang notification button para updated ka sa mga bagong lessons. Ako ang teacher mo, ang English teacher ni Juan. Class dismissed! See ya!